And we are live. Hello, and welcome to the fourth episode of Battle Tested History, the technologically unsound episode.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, guys. The internet in my house isn't working, so I got to use my cell phone.
We shall carry on anyhow.
Yes.
Today's subject is King Arthur. Now, we need to be careful. Uh, when I promoted today's show on the Padded Room Saturday, our official UK correspondent, Ricky Fleet, had a rather extreme reaction when I suggested that King Arthur may or may not have actually existed. His response was, "How dare you!" So, yes, our English friends across the pond are rather sensitive about this. And it makes sense because, real or not, the Arthurian legend is so inextricably linked with British history and the British zeitgeist that
Yeah.
you can't separate them. It's like Robin Hood, it's the same way.
Yeah.
Um, and the problem with British history prior to 1066 is that the Britons, the original people who lived there, didn't leave written records, and the records that we have of British history prior to 1066 are from the Romans who conquered them, and the Saxons who conquered them, and then the Normans who conquered them. So, who knows?
Yeah.
The movie we have chosen is I forget what year it came out, but it was King Arthur with Clive Owen and Keira Knightley. It was directed by Antoine Fuqua.
Wasn't it about 2004?
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there. Good damn movie.
Yes.
Good damn movie. Regardless of how historically accurate it may or may not have been.
And the historical accuracies in it, but
yeah. Now the other movie, and we've joked about this, but I honestly think the other movie that comes close to being historically accurate as far as the period is, believe it or not, Monty Python's King Arthur, and the Holy Grail. But, well, what could you do? Okay, now, most of what we know of the King Arthur legend comes from two sources. One is Geoffrey of Monmouth, who was writing in like the 12th century. And then a short time later, La Morte d'Arthur by some French dude that gave us the whole Sir Lancelot and Guinevere and
the love triangle, Knights of the Round Table.
Yeah, and all that stuff.
Being handed a sword from a lake by an aquatic top is no way to dispense with the system of government.
Help, help, I'm being repressed.
Bloody peasant. Oh, did you hear that? Yeah.
That's what I'm on about.
Of the Arthurian legends today are based on De Morte d'Arthur.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the 1981 movie. Sorry for the jumping around, people. I'm trying to get it comfortable. The 1981 movie Excalibur, the most famous of the King Arthur theatrical productions, the play by Richard Harris.
Mm-hmm. The musical.
The musical, yes.
Yes, Camelot.
Yeah.
Now, I just, today, prepping for the show, I watched a documentary that was hosted by Richard Harris.
Oh.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
Mm.
It's really good, and it does delve into the potential history of who this guy was. Um, in the first place, when Jeffrey Monmouth and whoever the French guy was, Engel or whatever the hell his name was, um, when they were writing during the age of chivalry, which
Mhm.
was the knights in shining armor and the honor and courtliness and
Yeah.
all that other shit. Well, that's all fine and good. However, they kept pretty accurate records around then. There
Mhm.
was no Arthur
No.
in the 12th century or the 11th or the 10th. There just wasn't. The It turns out that Geoffrey of Monmouth's account took as its source um, documents from the 5th century,
Hmm.
which brings it near the time that the King Arthur movie takes place.
Right.
Um, there aren't a lot of records from the 5th century
No.
because it was that gap between when the Romans left and the Saxons started encroaching in on Britain territory. So who knows?
Yeah, there was a 50-year period between I think 500 and 550 where Saxons were withdrawing.
Yeah.
And you know, history has never proven whether they were withdrawing, whether they were being defeated and retreating, but that was the basis for the Arthurian legend that he was the Roman warrior that was
Mhm.
part Saxon and not part Saxon, part British, and decided to defend his own people and defeat those barbaric Saxons.
Yeah, exactly.
Which were
Well,
really barbarically in the movie.
yeah, but at the time, the Britons were pretty barbaric themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like forget Camelot.
Oh yeah,
Forget all that shiny armor bullshit.
yeah. And the Knights of the Round Table, and we're all equal, and
Yeah, exactly. There weren't actually any Briton kings at the time. There were warlords.
right.
So if Arthur existed, or if there is an actual figure from which the story was created, he was a pretty savage bastard.
Oh yeah.
This wasn't nice and neat and clean
Yeah. Well,
and
I think a lot of it too is people relate that time to the Roman Empire. And yeah, if you were living in Rome or Italy, it was a nice place to live. You were living across the Alps. It made the Middle Ages look nice.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And the Britons, I mean, they were subjugated.
Yeah.
And then the Romans left. And this is the intriguing thing about the actual history is the Saxons got about halfway across England and then they stopped.
Mm.
Did they stop because they'd gone far enough and they didn't want to extend themselves too far? Or did they stop because somebody stopped them?
Yeah.
That's the question. If it's because somebody stopped them, then it is more than a little conceivable that the Arthurian legend, the core of it,
Mm-hmm.
is true. There was a guy who may or may not have been called Arthur who led the Britons to victory.
Yeah.
It's possible. We don't know.
Well, there's a lot of archaeological evidence that there was someone
Mm-hmm.
who was the premier warlord.
Right.
But I mean, that's to be expected. There's always going to be one tough guy tougher than the others.
Right.
But yeah, whether it was the King Arthur of legend or whether
Yeah.
legend turned him into King Arthur.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, the story from Geoffrey of Monmouth and I believe Le Morte Arthur was that Arthur's father, Uther Pendragon,
Mm-hmm.
um, coveted this other man's wife. And he wanted to they were in love, and he wanted to consummate their relationship. And of course, the guy who was actually married to her didn't want to let him do that. So she was sent off to this remote castle in a place called Tintagel, which is north of Cornwall.
Hmm.
It's really remote, and it's like on an outcropping. The only way you can access it is over a bridge. Okay, so this is remote. So the story goes that Uther went to his magician Merlin and had him cast a spell that made him look like the lady's husband,
Mm-hmm.
so that he could sneak across the bridge, get into the castle, and bump uglies with her. The result of which was Arthur. And the deal, supposedly, that Merlin made with Uther was that he would do it, but he got the firstborn son. And that's how Merlin raised Arthur or whatever. It was originally believed that this was bullshit because they found Tintagel, and the ruins of Tintagel actually dated from after Geoffrey of Monmouth wrote his account.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they dug a little further, literally, and discovered that Tintagel sat upon a much older settlement from the 5th century. So it was possible. Again, as you go through the history, it kind of flip a coin.
Yeah.
Because there's enough evidence there that goes, it could have been, but there's also evidence it's like,
Well, the one thing that always got me was if you look at the Arthur came about because two men loved the same woman.
yes,
When you get to La Morte Arthur, the whole Camelot fell apart because they
because
loved the same woman. Except in her case, she liked them both. So
I guess, and she ended up in a nunnery or something, right?
yeah.
Supposedly. Yeah, who knows?
But then again, also when the title was written, I mean, it's probably like a morality play. You know, look, he had all of England before him. He had the friendship, the 12 knights of the round table. Gee, a bunch of apostles maybe.
I recognize the story from somewhere. I don't know where.
And all of it was thrown away because of lust and passion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and also, again, you have to consider the time that these people were writing about.
Yes.
It was the age of chivalry. Well, in 1415, the English, under Henry V, ended the age of chivalry at a place called Agincourt.
Yes.
And here's an interesting little historical tidbit. This is the sign that Churchill's so famous for. The V for victory.
Yes.
The origin of this is that the king or Generalissimo or whoever the hell it was in charge of the French at Agincourt, said that he was going to cut the fingers off of every archer they captured. At the end of the battle, which they kicked the shit out of the French,
Yes.
they massacred them. End of the battle, the British archers were going, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I also heard that what they were doing was they were also screaming, pluck you.
Yes.
Which over time, because people couldn't say pluck, became
That's, I had not heard that, but that's possible.
Yeah.
That is possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's
I found out that this does not mean this.
no.
When
doesn't.
George Bush, I remember the first George Bush visited Australia, and I was stationed with an Aussie at Okinawa. We were watching the cast, and when he did that and everybody booed, I'm like, why is everybody booing? And that's when the Aussie explained to me the difference between that and, sorry to my friends in England, that. But he was
well, that was what
Hitler.
That was what Churchill used to do.
Yeah, he used to be telling his people victory, but he was also telling Hitler.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
And so chivalry got killed.
Yes.
Henry V, once more into the breach, dear friends.
Mm-hmm.
The French army was there's some question about how many were in the French army.
Mm-hmm.
Some say it's just tens of thousands, and they vastly outnumbered the British. They outnumbered them. It's a question of how much.
Yeah.
And they arrived on the battlefield mostly with knights and men at arms. The British had like 1,500 knights and like 5,000 or 6,000 archers. And the battlefield was very muddy. So you had these knights come clomping up in their heavy armor and sinking and getting stuck in the mud. And meanwhile, the archers are just bam, 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 nailing them. And then after they ran out of arrows, the archers, because they weren't wearing armor, were able to walk on top of the mud instead of sinking down into it. So they went around. Whack, whack.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the classic introduction of a new weapon that defeats decades or century-old warfare.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you mention that, it does remind me that was very similar to the final battle of Montbadon. Baden Hill, I mean, in King Arthur, where they were taking out the Saxons with the long-range bows and arrows.
Well, yeah, that probably wasn't too accurate. However, Guinevere as a Pict,
yeah,
the painted people, her fighting in that battle was accurate. The Pict women were badasses. They were vicious. So that part of it was definitely accurate. So we had that. But Baden Hill, which technically they don't really mention it in the movie, but that's the battle it's depicting.
Yeah.
It's Baden Hill. It wasn't at Hadrian's Wall.
No.
But it was on top of high ground.
Yes, yeah.
It's like a 900-foot hill.
Yep.
And
yeah. I had the high ground.
Yeah, well, whoever it was, they met the it was the Saxons, I guess. on the level ground, and they hit them with heavy cavalry, which the Saxons didn't have. And they inflicted a lot of damage, and then they took off, headed to that hill. So the Saxons kept marching. They're like, oh, we're badass Saxons. We're not going to take that. And the Britons hung out on top of that hill and just like, yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Come on. They got about halfway up this 900-foot hill, and then they charged with the cavalry again.
Yeah.
Just kicked the crap out of them. Cavalry left. Then the soldiers came down. And that's how Badon Hill was. It was, the Saxons were basically kicking ass and taking names everywhere, but it is believed that that battle is what stopped their advance.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And Anakin Skywalker never learned from that battle.
No, they did not learn from that battle.
Don't go after the guy in the high ground.
Nope. But anyway,
it is fascinating that, and we have the same, but we have so many legends in our history that people consider it historical, even though it isn't. He is such a major figure in British history. He's like the first ruler that believes in equality, and you see that so much in the movie. Like when he goes to the place for Germanus, and he shoves the insane monks in and closes them up and takes all the people away with him. So, is there any? I can't see it because I'm on here. Does anybody from the Commonwealth? Okay.
No, well, it's a bit late in England.
No, that's true.
It's a bit late in England. I did get one. Let me see if I can find it. There was one comment I got from one of our British friends. No, it's not there. It must be. It might be still. Carry on talking amongst yourselves. I need to find it. Come on, I'm here somewhere.
Michonne is getting some airtime.
There you go. Perfect.
She does this to me all the time when I'm on podcasts, when I'm writing. So.
Yep.
And it's actually the King Arthur mystique. I don't want to call it a legend. I want to. You figure it's always reappearing. It's been as far back in British history to the 6th century. Le Morte d'Arthur, the other book you were talking about, I can't remember who put it out. And it's been movies and plays and musicals all through the 20th and 21st century. It is just a compelling story. And I would love someday, I was doing some research on this before my computer died. And it's amazing how the archaeology and the historical aspects of it change every few years.
Yes, exactly. Speaking of which, there is evidence that Camelot may have actually existed, although not as you would think. And
yes, there weren't knights dancing on the table kicking chickens.
No. And pushing the pram a lot. Okay, we have Jennifer. Hi, you dirty pirate hookers. Okay. All right, Jen. Thank you.
I watched on Brazzers last night.
It could be. You never know. They did actually find a place that may have been Camelot. there
I know which
was
one you mean. It's like a wooden compound on a hill.
right. There's a place in Somerset called
Yes.
Cadbury Hill. Uh, there were two ancient villages were found from the right time period. One of which was West Camel, the other was Queen Camel.
Hmm.
Camel being the root of Camelot.
Uh,
4 miles away from these two villages is this place called Cadbury Hill.
yeah.
And in 1966, they started excavating it. 4 years later, they found the remnants of a gate tower and walls. They also found a longhouse with a central hearth. And with this longhouse, they found a lot of shards of wine pitchers. So these guys were sitting around drinking a shitload of wine, getting
Sounds like a night
hammered.
to me.
Yeah, sitting around this central hearth. So yeah, they were sitting in a circle, and they were sitting back drinking, being men. So
Yeah.
that could be where the Camelot legend comes from.
Well, I remember that because when I was in college, which was probably about the same time as Camelot, I had to do was asked to do a term paper on whether Arthur existed, and I remember that they found that village that looked like it was like pot village, pot stronghold. They said it was like
Mhm,
the early version of a castle. So
mhm. And apparently, this was your stepbrother's quote. Okay, well, thank
oh,
you, Jennifer.
on hi Ash.
Dirty pirate hookers. I don't think I've ever been called a dirty pirate hooker. But hey, why not?
I've been called a
So,
lot of things, but never a dirty pirate hooker.
that's right. So, I mean, take your pick. Did he exist? Did he not exist? I don't know. I like to think he did, or
I
somebody like him.
I think there was probably an Arthurian. Well, there was probably an Arthurian like figure,
Right.
a popular warlord, probably very good to his men. Like in the movie we saw, King
Mhm.
Arthur, who was, wasn't full of himself, thought of his men, and I'm sure that they gathered together and they probably, if not pushed the Saxons back, defeated them in a major battle.
Yes.
Now, that either delayed the continued Saxon invasion, maybe it pushed them back, maybe they just said, screw this, it ain't worth it, let's fall back. I think you'll
Yeah.
find there is a basis to the Arthurian legend, but I don't think it will have any. It will have
Yeah.
much relationship to the King Arthur legends
No.
we all know today.
No. No. The knights in shiny armor. The dancing at the. That is such an excellent movie.
He must be
I
king. How do you know that? He's not covered in.
She turned me into a newt. I got better.
I love that whole science scene. That's just.
That whole movie. The knights who say neat.
Well, but like you said earlier, that's the way it was. That was the type of science they used. The bringing out the
Exactly.
dead. That was just, it was a dirty, rotten, disgusting time to live.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't shining armor. It wasn't, everybody's clean and Jennifer agrees. Excellent. It wasn't clean and friendly and puppy dogs and it was fighting back then was brutal.
Oh yeah,
It was vicious. You hacked each other to death.
yeah. And they did show a lot of that in the. Well, they actually apparently, from what I read, the fight scenes in that movie were much bloodier.
I'm not
And
surprised.
then Disney, I think it was Disney produced it, or whoever produced it said, no, we got to cut this back. We want to make this PG-13.
Mhm.
But I guess there's a DVD out there put out by Fuqua, the director's cut, that
Mhm.
shows all the bloody scenes.
I would love to see that. Antoine Fuqua is one of my favorite directors in the business now. I
What
mean,
is it?
he did Training Day, he did Tears of the Sun, he did The Replacement Killers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's done some really damn good movies. King Arthur, obviously.
Yeah.
He does good violence.
Yeah. And it was realistic too.
Yes.
You know, that was the thing. It wasn't running around the guy, taking on 12, with his bare hands, taking on 12 sworded Saxons at once and taking them out. It was brutal. I loved the scene when they lured them onto the ice.
Yes.
That
Yes.
was. So do you think the Saxons would have been, well, I guess, no, they came from a cold climate. Do you think the Saxons would have been smart enough?
Well, I mean, you never know because, I mean, I grew up in Chicago, so ice is a real thing.
Yes.
We used to walk across frozen ponds all the time.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, maybe it was just so naturally ingrained that, of course, this is a Hollywood movie and it was in the script, damn it. But anyway.
It is the best, excluding Monty, it is the best Arthurian movie I have seen. I've seen quite a few.
Mhm.
And it's one of those that, there are certain things outside of World War II history that fascinate me. And the Arthurian legend is one of them.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, it's endured for so long.
Yeah.
It was 12th century.
Yeah. I mean, I know my British friends are going to get mad at me, but the legendary Arthur is to the British what George Washington is to us.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Except, I'm sorry, King Arthur was not a revolutionary and a traitor. So.
Yes, indeed.
Oh, our British friends are glad to have gotten rid of us.
Oh, yeah, they are. I'm sure they are. Yeah. And I wouldn't really want to go back there now.
Yeah.
All the silliness is going on there. But the entire period, essentially it's the Dark Ages.
Yes.
We're talking about. That entire period fascinates me.
Yeah.
Especially in England. England's got some strange history, man.
Yeah. And I like the indications they made about how the Catholic Church was so different from area to area.
Oh, yeah.
When they got to, I think it was Germania, he was just such a dick.
And everybody was happy when Guinevere killed him.
Yes. Yeah.
Exactly. The Brits, look at Boudica. Queen Boudica.
Yeah.
Who took on the Romans. You look at King Albert, the actual King Albert.
Mm-hmm.
Just the stuff that first millennia AD is filled with all sorts of really fascinating shit that went on.
Yeah.
And again, unfortunately, because the problem with ancient history, particularly, is that, as the saying goes, it's written by the victors, or maybe more appropriately, it's written by the people in charge.
Yeah.
And the people in charge will invariably spin the story to serve their own best interests. So the story we get of the ancient world is almost certainly horse plucky.
Yeah. And
There's
and
just
so
enough truth to make it plausible, but
so many historical records are gone.
gone. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, or they weren't kept.
Yeah, that too. Yeah.
I mean, the Druids never kept written records.
Yeah.
So,
Well, what you were saying is true. It's like, and I can't remember the play. Wasn't it like Henry III that Shakespeare made him out to be this like deformed, mentally deranged person?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Just to make it look like, well, gee, yeah, we could overthrow this guy. Look at him. But you see that all the time.
Yep. I find it amusing people who go to Renaissance fairs,
Mm.
um, and they treat it as this wonderful place with the flowing
Yeah.
ribbons in their hats and dresses, and everybody's just playing their lutes and having a good old time. The historical reality is much, much, much worse.
There was a Renaissance fair in Massachusetts, Southern Massachusetts. I used to go to every year in college. And I loved it because there was a group of 5 kids that showed up in Star Trek uniforms and always pretended they had beamed down to a primitive planet's surface.
Oh yeah, that's such an awesome idea.
And what was great was half of the Renaissance performers went along with it.
Why not?
It was fun to watch them. Like, this is a camera. It took my soul.
Well, and to be fair, a lot of the people who are seriously involved in the Renaissance fair culture take it seriously. They try to be historically accurate. It doesn't really work. But I mean, the hygiene is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Mortality rates are real low.
Oh yeah.
Oh man, you're lucky if you live past 35.
Yeah.
Um, infant mortality was.
Infant mortality was ridiculous. You couldn't survive anything.
I know.
You get a cavity, you're dead in a year.
Yeah.
And then when you got the plague coming in, that didn't help.
No, it didn't. And people lived in mud, or they literally made their houses out of shit.
Yeah.
They took cow patties and
Yeah.
used them. They dried them out and used them to build their huts with.
And even when we went into the Renaissance and started going towards the French Revolution era, even then they didn't, the elite didn't bathe.
That's where perfume came from.
I remember reading an account of like when some king died, they scraped like a half an inch of makeup off of his face.
Oh yeah, well that's where perfume came from.
Yeah,
is they didn't bathe, so they made themselves smell good.
Yeah, at least the peasants bathed when the cow kicked them into the river.
Was that while they were eating cake, or
yeah.
I don't know. But
history is history fascinates me, all aspects. And one thing I love, and we're not going to get into it this episode, is the history of the Catholic Church. and how it is so different. What we know today of the Catholic Church is so different from its early history.
Well, that's because they were in charge.
Yes.
And they were telling people this is our history.
Yeah.
And they were lying.
Yeah.
Through their damn teeth. It's a case could be made for crimes against humanity. They killed a lot of people. They tortured a lot of people.
Oh,
they were like the Catholic Church, and I'm not I'm not dissing people of the Catholic faith. You can believe whatever you want as long as it makes your life better and makes you a better person.
Yeah, we're talking the historical, the Catholic Church 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, the church itself, the hierarchy, the mechanism of the church. They were. I mean, they were like the Borg. Resistance is futile. Literally.
Yeah.
It was that you believe what we believe, or we will kill you. Period. And we will set your ass on fire.
And the violence of the Crusades. Every Crusader movie I watched as a kid, with John Wayne and that, it was white. It was, nice guy, white guys in shining armor doing God's will. Bullshit. That was such a brutal war on both sides.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, and the absurdity of the idea behind it. It's, the Christians didn't like the Muslims. Well, they're both rooted in the same religion.
Yeah.
The Abrahamic religion. It's the same damn religion.
Yeah.
They just one side believes one thing and another side believes another.
Yeah.
Well, can't have that.
And then let's not forget, the fact that, the king was like, oh shit, I got all these knights that are bored. Hey, let's do a crusade. And then when all the knights realized they owed so much money to the Knights Templars, they're traitors.
Amazing. Well, that's where Friday the 13th comes from.
I was just going to say that. Yep.
I brought that up on the last Padded Room.
Yeah.
On Friday the 13th in the year, I believe it was 1314.
Okay.
Sometime around then.
Yeah.
The French king owed the Templars a shitload of money and decided he didn't want to pay it. So he ordered them all to be arrested, and he did it. Which, I mean, this may be the first historical example of a coordinated arrest like you see today. Because they arrested like all of the knights at the same time on the same day all over France.
Yeah.
And then the French king talked Clement IV, the Pope, into sanctioning it all.
Yeah.
So it's...
And I love the fact that other countries helped them get away. Other countries just turned their backs and said, we're not doing anything for this.
It's like yeah.
I do like the Templar myth. I'd like to believe it that they had information, since they were based on the Temple of Solomon in Jerusalem. They had information the church did not want to get out.
Well, they found something there.
Yeah.
That much is clear, because the Templars started out as a fairly small organization, and most religious-based organizations, they were basically living in poverty. They didn't really think a lot of material possessions and yada, 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 yada. And at some point during the First Crusade, they all of a sudden pulled up roots, headed back to France or wherever it was, and boom, they were just everything they touched was turning to gold.
Yeah.
Well,
The Templars. So we're not going down a rabbit hole. They're another legend. I mean, the Templars existed, but there are so many legends associated with them, and so many movies. There was that Spanish series, oh God, I can't remember the name of it, but it was the Templars were executed for their crimes, and then they came back as zombies riding the horses. Which was actually, the movie sucked, but God, they were really good monsters. And, you've got all the stuff today. You've got I can't even think of it. Brown's book there. Tom Hanks did the movie. The Vinci Code.
Yeah, Vinci Code. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean they're just like huge in popular culture today.
Big
They're
time.
almost as popular today as the Illuminati, which doesn't exist.
Is that what the CIA told you?
I cannot confirm or deny that.
Excellent.
Now, if I get cut off in the next few seconds, you'll know what happened.
Exactly. Well, again, this is so much of what happened up to the Enlightenment, from the death of Christ all the way up to the Enlightenment, was, well, it's suspect. The story that we've been told is suspect and has to be treated as such. Well, that's where conspiracy theories are born.
Yeah.
So you can't, if you like history, you can't not like the Templars.
Yes.
It's like, wow, what did they have? What was it they had? I've done a lot of research on Montsegur, which was as a Cathar stronghold.
Yes.
And one of the very first crusades didn't go to Jerusalem. It went to Montsegur. And it went to one other place. I can't think of the name of it, but at this other place, the Pope said, kill them all, God will know his own. That's where kill them all, that God sort of out comes from. And it was the Cathars believed, they didn't believe in divinity. They didn't believe in the Holy Trinity. They didn't believe in a lot of the stuff that the church was doing. They believed in good works. They believed in that the women had a place within the religious order. And they were just, they were like really good Christians. Well, Catholic Church couldn't have that. So they went and massacred them all. And several years later, I mean, this is like several hundred years later, a priest near Montsegur took over an abbey, and he went into this place as a regular priest, not a bishop with the weird hats and the not the Vatican with its own city, one of the richest countries in the entire world. Because he was a priest, so he didn't have much. So he went, he got there and he didn't have much. And then all of a sudden, he was flush. So he found something in this abbey.
Two things that I'm not a big conspiracy theorist when it comes to the Templars. But two things that always just make me wonder. The theory that, whatever they found, they took to the States. They took to America, they hid it there, and they came back. The abbey that was built in Scotland, the one that was in Da Vinci Code, was built in the 13th century. It had on it depictions of maize, which at that time existed only in America or North America, and we weren't going to discover that for another 200 to 300 years,
at least. Yeah.
The other thing that is, and I always thought this, it always made me wonder as a kid, but the Da Vinci Code and some of the things I read, if Mary Magdalene was just a tramp, a prostitute, why did Jesus, when he come back, go visit her first?
Well, yeah. Well, there is some justification for that. The crucifixion was not witnessed by any of the 12 disciples because they were all on the run. They couldn't show their face for fear they'd get executed as well.
Yeah.
So the women who were involved in the Jesus movement, Mary Magdalene being prominent among them, were the only ones who witnessed the crucifixion. And they were the ones who were, I don't know, there's a Jewish term for it, sitting Shiva.
Oh.
At the death, they were, I don't know, hanging out there as part of a ritual or something. I don't know. So it's not entirely unreasonable to think that, yes, assuming Jesus actually did come back to life and resurrected and the whole 9 yards, that he would visit with Mary Magdalene.
Possible.
It is interesting to note that the writings that exist from the Jesus groups, who were essentially, it was a cult at that point, for the first 50 years. There's no mention of the resurrection. None.
It's funny you say that. When I joined the CIA, my wife at the time gave me a book. She thought I'd get a kick out of it, called The Third Day. And the whole premise of the book was the Israelis found Jesus's body. So the United States and the Vatican, pretty much the CIA and the Vatican, come together to try to steal Jesus's body back before Israel can undermine Christianity.
There's a great book by the author Tom Robbins, who, if you like word porn, and by that I'm not talking, it's not, well, it is kind of sexual because it's Tom Robbins, but it's, if you enjoy wallowing in words, Tom Robbins is the guy to read. He wrote a book called Just Another Roadside Attraction.
Oh, I've heard of that, yeah.
And part of it, one of the main characters is a Vatican assassin who discovered a body in the vaults of the Vatican. And for reasons, he believed this was the body of Jesus. So he took it. And the story is about how these Vatican assassins are trying to catch him, and he's hiding out at a flea circus. It's a hilarious book.
What's the name of it again?
Just Another Roadside Attraction.
I gotta read that one sometime.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty damn funny. And And it leaves it open as to whether or not that was the actual body of Jesus.
Oh.
So maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. Who knows?
No, I mean, history, especially ancient history, fascinates me, especially when they discover other documents from the era, other books and that show, oh no, that's not what really happened.
Oh, here's one that will blow your mind. I discovered it like a couple of months ago. This is one that will blow your mind. Jesus is not the name that would have appeared on his birth certificate had there been birth certificates.
Really?
It is a mistranslation.
Oh.
You're in the
Of what?
original Aramaic or Hebrew, the name was Joshua. And when they translated it into Greek, it became Jesus. And by the time that, because everybody was spread out and you didn't exactly have mass communication at the time. By the time they realized the mistake, it had become ingrained. It was too late. So Jesus is the guy we know, but that wasn't his name.
One of the things that always breaks me up about medieval and Renaissance paintings of Jesus is Jesus was born in Jerusalem. I don't think he was a tall, blonde, white guy.
Probably not.
No.
Probably not.
But we could do a series of shows on.
Oh, yes, we could.
On religion, not just Christianity.
Yeah. And we'd probably get a hell of a lot of feedback on it.
There'd be a jihad against us.
At the very least.
Yes.
Well, that brings us to the end of our podcast for today. No idea what the next one will be.
No. We'll figure out something good.
We'll figure out something that'll be in 2 weeks. Final thoughts, sir.
Any of you who are tuning into this show, if you're big history buffs like us, if you think of a really great topic, let us know. I love history. When I read fiction, it's mostly zombies. When I read history, it covers everything. Yes. It comes everything from the early history right up to the Cold War and the present. So, but it's fascinating. As I used to tell, with a kind of twist, I used to tell my history students in high school, those who fail history are condemned to repeat it.
That is very true. My personal favorite quote comes from the German philosopher Hegel, who said, "We learn from history that we do not learn from history."
Yeah.
That is very true. But there are, as I said, I saw, if you can Google it. It's on YouTube, I believe. Excellent documentary on King Arthur, hosted by Richard Harris.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
I highly recommend that. There's all sorts of. There aren't a lot of books on the history of King Arthur. There are a lot of Arthurian legend books, but not a lot on the actual history. There are all sorts of books on the other stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And we were pretty wide-ranging, but yeah, what the hell? Why not? History's just cool.
Yeah, the last good King Arthur, historical King Arthur book I read was written about 45 years ago. And I'm sure that the history, the archaeological finds, the documents uncovered have changed that book 1,000 times over.
At least. At least. All right. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
I love these shows.
Thank you, Jennifer, for chiming in, and thanks to the people who keep watching these. We are getting people watching these when I post them on YouTube, so cool. Thanks. If you want, please hit like and subscribe on the YouTube channel. It doesn't cost you nothing. It's not going to put you on any list.
The NSA is already following you because you follow me and Jeff.
Well, Third Reich and the Occult. That was our last episode.
Yes.
And thanks for paying attention.
Was saying that was her favorite episode.
Oh, well, of course.
Yeah.
And we love you too, Jen. And I'm sure we'll actually probably do another Third Reich and the Occult.
Oh yeah.
I'm certain of it. And we will hit the Second World War many, many times.
Yeah. Hey, we sometime we could do Third Reich and Aliens.
Ooh.
The Glocka, Hanabu, all that. The Frill Dahman.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks everybody. Yeah, hit like and subscribe. It doesn't cost you nothing. But the more subscriptions that we get, the more cool features that we can use on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. I mean, there have to be like 1 million of you guys for us to make any money off of it. So that's not what we're talking about.
No, we're not talking making money. We just want the exposure.
That's it.
We want more people who love history like us to find the show.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, thanks again to everybody. Yes, Jen. Love you too. Peace. 2 weeks, folks.
Ciao, guys.